the whole flow of Scripture is sin leads to chaos, sin leads to dysfunction and destruction. How are you seeing this? How are we seeing this just show up in our world as our world is saying, no, thanks, Jesus, we've heard what you had to say, but we want to do it our own way? I mean, what's some of the artifacts of dysfunction and destruction that we're seeing happen as a result of that?
I mean, I think that kind of going back to what Corey said about, I think there's this like need for like validation, and like specifically through social media or through the internet or in our daily lives, and specifically with young people, I think I see that a lot of just like there's this like if you're not having sex or if you're not going to have sex all the time, there's something wrong with you. And so you should be having it all the time is what culture says, but then also they're saying it has no effect on you and it will do nothing to you. So it's like these two like almost like voices that are screaming out at them, and that can be really confusing because it's like, okay, I should be doing this all the time, this is what culture's telling me, but it's also saying that like, but it's fine, like hookups are fine, going to like sleep with my boyfriend is fine, like that's all great, but then once they actually encounter that, that's not what they see in the media, or that's not what they're seeing, what the media and the movies and the TV shows are like portraying is nothing what they are experiencing. So it just leads to like this like confusion, this like even more need for validation, because like when we're not getting our validation from Jesus or from the Lord, it's like we have to get it somewhere else. And so there's just this like dire need to like be satisfied and to be validated and to know that like we're enough and like we like are doing the right thing for our lives. And if we're listening to culture and if culture is our God, like we're going to heed to whatever culture says, whether it makes sense or not. So
yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and we've seen that permeate inside of the church and outside of the church. Just because we are in a system that is supposed to be modeled after the gospel doesn't mean that everyone in that system is actually following what Jesus says. And so we have recognized in this last bit of culture, we've seen these movements rise up of Me Too and Church Too, where people are sharing their stories of the ways that these systems have been broken and the ways that the world has shaped our sexual ethic to cause people to act out on behaviors that cause other people harm. And so thankfully we have people in the church now who are being voices, who have been voices for a long time, declaring the truth of who God says we are and how we're supposed to treat each other. But we have to be vigilant. We have to be aware of how those things can play out. For us as a church, we spend a lot of time talking about child sexual abuse and training our volunteers and making sure that we're aware of the signs of abuse in the home, abuse by leaders and those who are in people's lives, because there are very real dynamics that we can cause harm and damage if we don't. And so we have tried to stand in that space of really being cautious, being careful of training people to know what we're looking for. But we recognize that the reason that we have to do that is because there, for a long time, have just been people who've taken advantage of this new system that the world has tried to rise up, this idea that sexual ethics don't matter or that they're everything in a way that Jesus tells us that they're not. And so for us, we have stepped into that space, not just with being safe with thinking about how to protect children, but also just how to protect each other, how to stand in a space of recognizing when someone's been abused and how to offer them care and counseling and community. We were talking earlier just about the need for us to be aware, but also for us to be accountable, for us to be accountable for our own behavior, but also to be accountable as a community for what we're putting out to people. And so we want to educate our children. We want to educate each other. We want to stay constantly vigilant about the ways that culture is shaping our hearts instead of allowing Jesus to shape our hearts. You know, what you were saying earlier about we're all being spiritually formed by something. The world is worshiping something too. And we have something to worship that actually brings life, that actually brings wholeness and healing. And so I think that if we understand that Jesus has called us to be the champion of the vulnerable, but he's also called us to be accountable for our own behavior so that we don't make people vulnerable, then that will be something that can bring life back to a space that the world has brought a lot of darkness.
Yeah, that's right.